something linked to the way we might look the world and its various divides. But I think it's a little too easy, perhaps, just to say, well, you write into English and not in Urdu or in Sindhi or in Punjabi or in Baloch or whatever. And on that matter, be it in India or be it in Pakistan, the question is the same. The point is that on the chessboard of global culture, language is also a geopolitical tool. It helps to define supremacies and may in the process obscure the richness of diversity. And this is why the only way to counterbalance it is to translate, and to translate writer both ways. This is why we need both creator and mediators as well, and sometimes they are the same in one, as with Bilal Tanweer. And this is why we need initiative as the one we enjoy here in this second edition of the Karachi Literature Festival, to which I wish long life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc Racine, and I think all of you will agree that this has been a very astonishing and in fact very, what should I say? At the outset I said that we are very familiar with the American and the British experts of South Asia, and we read them, and I said that here is someone who is from France, and let's see if he brings any dimension to this issue. And I think I can't think of any South Asian experts who would have such a grasp on the literature of South Asia and particularly of Pakistan. And I'm sure that this is not because he had to give this lecture. He couldn't have done all this in the last few days.
I did my work precisely for this lecture.
Yes, no, but then the kind of, I mean, the horizon, the entire horizon that you had of Pakistani literature and the kind of insights that you bring to it in the context of how geopolitics impacts upon literature and how writers, when they are writing stories about human beings, about people, relate to the political situations, and you mentioned how you analyzed a case of exploding mangoes and your reference to the Wasted Vigil by Nadeem Aslam, and how he responded to questions posed about his interest in politics. In Pakistan, we are all also very familiar with how our great poets have really interpreted the geopolitical situation and our political journey in their poetry. And of course, this is the centenary year of Faiz. And Faiz has been writing about major events in the same almost way as a commentator would be commenting on the affairs that have taken. Now that we have you here, may I just ask a question which is not entirely related to literature? With your expertise in this region, how do you look at this post-Salman Taseer situation and the kind of environment that we are confronting and the kind of attitudes that have the ruling party, his own party, and how do you look at this?
Well,
a novelist may at some time write about it.
You anticipated the way I could have escaped from your question, saying that let's wait for a great novel about that. But I shall not escape that, because precisely for me, why I've immediately accepted the invitation to come to Karachi was because I wanted to seize the opportunity as a scholar to meet people, not just in the specific context of apostasy, but of course it's one of the questions which we have to face. Everyone, I believe, Pakistanis first, obviously, but also observers outside Pakistan, looking at Pakistan. You know, it's very difficult, and it's very difficult not to excessively dramatize what was called by artist Naim as catastrophic event. But on the other hand, we are supposed, both you, the citizens, and me, the foreign observer, just to try to look at what's happening. You know, for years, I made a point not to write about the Talibanization of Pakistan. I never use the word, contrarily to some of us. I never used the word till the end of 2007, when militants from South Waziristan decided to merge their groups and to call themselves Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. So in this case, it was not a kind of imagination from foreign scholars who were just depicting Pakistan a bad way. The chaps themselves decided to say, well, we are Pakistani Taliban. And when they expanded to Swat, and with their double strategy of fighting the forces there, the frontier corps first, and then when on the one hand and on the other hand, starting a terrorist attack amongst in the big cities of Pakistan, then the issue of Talibanization could be really addressed. To answer now your question, I think there is some sort of parallel. And in a way, both the writers and the scholar have to pay attention to the right word. I think one has reason to be very disturbed by what has happened, and to put it bluntly, what has happened after the murder is probably still more serious than the murder itself. I've discussed with a number of people here during the last couple of days, and I know that we are here in the confine of a festival where it's rather the meeting point of the Karachi liberals to put a sticker on you, and if you accept someone to put a sticker, I don't like sticker myself, so I'm very reluctant to use stickers, but well, whatever it's worth. The real thing is a culture of fear installing itself in the country. I've heard a few anecdotes that I shall not express here about precisely the kind of, it reminds me what some writers in Europe, and I'm very careful about what I'm saying, and I'm not making comparison. I'm rather trying to use evocation rather than comparison. I'm not saying that what I shall depict is something that will happen in Pakistan. But this kind of the culture of fear, there is a time when we are hesitating to say this or to say that. It has been already treated by European novelists when they were writing about the rise of fascism in the 30s. When there is a moment when one has to stand up, and it's of course easy to say that when you are in my position, but I think it's a way to answer your question. Once again, I'm not saying that history is repeating itself. What I'm saying is that societies, most of societies, and in any case European societies and not just South Asian societies, have faced under different colors the same challenge. And I do believe that it's very important not to be in a position of denial about the risk, but it's just a risk. No one has gained. And I do believe that whatever the obscurantists are trying to do, I believe that they will not win, that there is always a possibility to resist that. For me, the real problem, if I'm not wrong in my analysis, but I have to think again about that, you know, in a way, it was easy at the time to say, well, that's the mad fringe. It's reassuring. If it's just a mad fringe, okay. But now I'm just wondering if it has not gone beyond the mad fringe. And that, it's of course more anguishing.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry for this small distraction. We pressed for time, we are. It's already 6. What do you suggest? Do we conclude it? Yes. Oh yes, we'll be. Amina has very kindly allowed us a few minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. Any comment on that? Please. Then you.
That was a very interesting talk, very thought-provoking. As an old-time political worker, we have done so many analysis of our society and where it's drifting. And we see some major fault lines, like we see the sectarian divide or the ethnic divide or the center versus the province contradictions. And then we have a war in our neighborhood, the threat of Talibanization, as they say. And then, of course, as the economic situation declines, there is the growing gulf between the haves and the have-nots. My question is, you have an outsider's view, someone who has a distance and can perhaps take a better picture of what is happening. What, in your assessment, is the major fault line? There are these existentialist threats. And of course, there are certain strengths our society also has to fight back because A, the people of this country want to keep the country together. The people of this country want peace and they don't want violence. And they will fight for more autonomy and they'll fight for their rights. But basically, the people of the country want this country to stay together.
Sure.
So we have our strengths also. There is some disunity. There is the need for a new platform for political reform. But in your assessment, what do you think is the major threat? Is it just the fundamentalist fringe, or what do you see as the major threat to us? Thank you.
Thank you. May I suggest that we take another question?
Sure.
And that you respond to both of them and then we conclude. Here.
My question to you is that literature is generally a window into a culture. And in our case, that window has been closed except for certain themes that are very popular in the West, in the sense that if there is a certain writing on feminist literature, it'll be, it'll generate a lot of oohs and ahs behind it. But the quintessential Pakistani, one who lives with poverty, who lives with challenges, and yet is still hospitable, is kind, or whatnot, that is never depicted in what is translated abroad. There's a certain appetite for a certain kind of writing, which depicts the Pakistani culture, which is a 100 years old culture, as one that needs saviors. So that is the kind that is, has more of a following in the West. And my question is that, is there any scope for the quintessential Pakistani and the beauty of our culture to be represented in writings that are translated for the French public or the Western public at large? Thank you.
I think let's have just one more question.
My question is, I mean, looking at from outside's perspective, you've seen globally how things move and how countries change over the time. Looking at Bangladesh in 1971, I mean, we're talking about, since last 2 days, we've heard about people talking about after Salman's death and all these other things. Now, and then there's a small community, like 10% of literate Pakistanis who feel the country should move in a different way, where the 90% feels who are have-nots have a different perception altogether. And, you know, somebody raised a point that liberals will never take the risk to go out on the street to try to defend or change. Now, I'm concerned and worried, and this is my question to you.
Could you please be brief?
Yeah, okay. My question is, do you feel we will just keep sleeping like this and let the tide go over our heads? Or will we ever wake up and try to change things? From looking at international perspective, what do you feel about that?
Thank you. And the final last question.
Literature to build an alternative national narrative. They've raised this question of, you know, we need to reimagine Pakistan yesterday. Do you sense that in the literature from, you know, the past 7, 8, 10 years? Is there some semblance of an alternative narrative through this literature?
Well, my bag is full, no? How many seconds?
Four questions in search of an answer.
Well, perhaps I'll try to answer everything in one set, no, if I may. Well, of course, the question about the main fault line and the main threat, here again, I think the difficulty is that there are several fault lines, and in a